while things have been going on, the department submitted our comment letter to the Fish and Wildlife Service relative to the bi-state. The end of October was the deadline for sending information to them for their consideration in the listing process. In our letter, I think we did a very good job of making it as difficult as possible for the service. They made the decision in 2010 that the bi-state sage-grouse was warranted for listing, but precluded. And so what we were asked to do was to show, put up or shut up, basically, show what improvements of what things have happened in a positive way for sage-grouse since 2010. That's a tall order because it's not that long ago that they made that determination. But there's a heck of a lot of projects that have been funded in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. PGA removal through the Partners program. We talked about that. We also have the regulatory mechanisms that they were very concerned about. Both the Forest Service and the BLM are modifying their resource management plan as well as the forest management plans, and they should be completed by the time the decision needs to be made. There's 4 easements that have been signed up. One easement, $4 million. The top priority private properties have been either signed up or they're in the process of completing their application, which is a big deal because 17% of the bi-state is controlled by private owners, and they have the best property, quite frankly, and that's where the grouse take their young and raise them around those wet meadows. And also we, with the generous donation from the private sector, we put about 50 grand into it. There was $30,000 from Cal Fish and Game. We did additional survey work, Lex survey work with our helicopter and contract helicopter, and we found more Lex than we knew that existed, and the population trend has been on an increase for some time. It's been stable to increasing for some period of time. So we went ahead and submitted that letter. I also reminded the Fish and Wildlife Service that they were embarking on a new process within their own agency to measure success, and that's their surrogate species program. And the way that they're measuring success of their programs is whether or not the species has improved from a habitat perspective as well as a population perspective. And I encourage them to use the same optic when they looked at the bi-state and not measure it differently than they would their own success or failure of their own programs. I did receive notification from both the BLM and the Forest Service. They submitted their letter and information on time as well. So now it's in their court. They have the next 6 months or so to go through all the data and make a recommendation to Ren, who's the Lowenfeld, who's the regional director in Sacramento, and then they'll make a recommendation to list or not to list to the Washington, D.C. office and work it through their process. So I guess basically stand by to hear what the news is going to be. The Governor's Sage-grouse Committee recommendations, one is to establish a council, and the second is to put together a technical team. We went in mass, government agencies, to IFC and were granted IFC contingency general fund dollars to fund the first year to get that off the ground. The Department of Wildlife will be funding one position for the technical team, and it's on a fast track. The positions were flown the other day, and they're receiving applications. I just found out a little while ago that there's not very many people that have applied for the wildlife position. I think partly because it appears to be a DCNR position, not a Department of Wildlife position. So I think there's some hurdles that we need to get over, and we've asked for an extension so we can maybe beat the brush. There's a couple of very well qualified sage-grouse folks that are currently looking for a job that are not within MDOW that we were hoping that would apply. But anyway, we're working with Department of Conservation and Natural Resources on that process as well. The BLM folks came and briefed me this last week on Friday on the alternatives for the greater sage-grouse EIS. They received the state plan and alternatives, and they plugged those in. They were going to evaluate A through F. There's going to be 2 conservation alternatives, one from Western Watersheds and one from Wildlife Gardens. They tried to put them together, but they were too different to be able to put them into one. So they're going to have 2 conservation organization alternatives, plus the state alternative, as well as the National Technical Team report as an alternative. My sense is that when they go through their analysis at this point, which is going to take 8 months or so, that the preferred alternative will end up being some combination of all those alternatives. That's my sense. I don't think any particular alternative's got all the answers that the service is looking for, because at the end of the day, the Fish and Wildlife Service is the one that needs to be happy with whatever they come up with to keep the bird off the list. So that remains to be. And then the last thing you might be interested to note, I was thinking, gosh, I'm not sure the Fish and Wildlife Service has ever had to deal with what the effect might be of their own decision on the conservation of the bird, of a particular species. So I asked the WAFWA Technical Sage-grouse team, which I'm the chairman of, to do a West-wide survey of all the states to determine what they're doing currently, since 2000, over the last 12 years, in sage-grouse conservation, whether it's survey work, habitat improvement, acquisition, the gamut, and then identify where the dollars came from for that sage-grouse work. And the white paper is almost complete. It's being peer-reviewed right now, but somewhere around $132 million were spent, sportsmen's dollars, to manage sage-grouse over the last 12 years. I can tell you that most directors at our WAFWA meetings have said that if the bird is listed, many of the states have laws that says that they can't use the sportsman's money to do conservation work on species that are not part of the hunting genre. So what that means is that a significant, well, the 90% of the money that's spent in the West to manage sage-grouse is going to dry up. And so the WAFWA directors are asking the Fish and Wildlife Service reminding them they need to take note of this and to determine how they're going to roll that in, if you will, to what the effects of the listing is actually going to have on the bird. I mean, it's no different than having pinyon juniper encroachment, quite frankly. If all of a sudden your decision is a conservation input on the negative side, they need to consider that. So it'll be real interesting to see what they do with that. So that letter is almost complete as well. Other than that, I guess I can answer some questions. Oh, I do have something that Commissioner Drew pointed out, that the stakeholder update for the greater sage-grouse recommendations and implementation is Tuesday, December 11th at 10 a.m. From 10 to 11 in the Gwynn room. And they're going to run through all the recommendations and implementation for the greater sage-grouse. So that's available to you, and you can also, if you're in Elko, the Great Basin College in Elko, in room 124, the Greenhaw Technical Arts Building, you'll be on a video conference as well. So, the Gwynn room is not in the Capitol, but where the governor's office is, upstairs. So if you were going to go to the governor's office, you walk into the security there, and it's upstairs and across the hall, in the back.
It's a round room that's really hard to hear in.
Excuse me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible acoustics.
Terrible.
Commissioner Macbeth.
I just happened to be on the BLM's website, and I thought I saw that the BLM had issued something on December 5th with regard to the bi-state. Did you see that?
Yes, that was their letter. We sent ours October 30th. They sent theirs December 5th.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
They took liberty on the deadline. But the information was still accepted. So,
Anybody
we
else
met the
have
deadline.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to I, Heritage